Hi, everybody. This is April Cummings from Cayman Life TV, and we're excited, and by we, I mean me, excited to launch a brand new section today. I'm going to say we're calling it EDBEAT. Is that right, Patrick?
I was going with EDBEAT, but EDUBEAT is good
EDBEAT.
too.
Either one is going to work. We're playing this a little bit by ear. Patrick Brendel is joining me, and we're launching this segment in order, I think, really to give people a sense of the work you're doing when it comes to covering education. You've got this amazing enterprise. It is nonprofit journalism, and I love the concept at the core because it really does give people an opportunity to know that the work that you're producing isn't focused on ad sales and clicks, but it's really focused on content that has journalistic value in the education space. Patrick, thanks so much for kicking this off with us. We hope to do it regularly. Tell people a little bit about Cayman Current.
Okay, well, the Cayman Current is a nonprofit digital first public service journalism organization. And what that means is, obviously, nonprofit is the Cayman Current is a registered Cayman Islands charity. We don't have advertisements or subscriptions or paywalls. We are funded entirely through supporters' contributions, and I encourage everybody to donate early and often. We are a digital first organization, which means that all of our content is published first on our website, caymancurrent.org. And we don't have a newspaper, we don't have a magazine, we don't have a TV channel like some, we don't have a radio show. So everything we do is digital first, but we also welcome and encourage collaboration with other media like Cayman Life TV, because as a nonprofit, our goal is to get our journalism out in front of as many people as possible through whatever means. And then the last part is public service journalism. And I like to think of public service journalism as news that is good for the health of the community. So we don't do things like traffic accidents or celebrity news or real crime stories. If you think of your news media options as a buffet, then public service journalism is the peas and carrots. So we're not chocolate cake, but I think peas and carrots taste good, and it's also good for you.
And it's good for you. Absolutely. So I think that one of the great things about what you're doing is that your focus is education. Why education, and what is it about education in Cayman that you think really needs to be covered that we aren't already seeing?
Well, I guess first with education is the most important issue facing Cayman society or any society. And when you're thinking about starting a single subject news organization, you think of things like healthcare and public safety and the economy, but all of those tie into and are driven by education. So for me, when I thought we're going to focus on one single subject in Cayman, it had to be education. And in terms of what we cover that isn't being covered right now, as a lot of people know, the news business all across the world is it's shrinking rather than growing. And when you're looking at this buffet of options and you don't have the resources to serve up all those things, the peas and carrots are among the first things to go. So before I started the Current in September, we launched in September 2020. No news organization in Cayman had any reporter dedicated to covering education, either even on a part-time basis. So in terms of what we're covering, everything that we do, except for maybe some press releases being turned around, wasn't going to be covered by anybody else.
So I wanted us to kind of this first debut segment, if we will, give people a sense of the scope of the work you're doing, why you're doing it, but also what they can expect. And one of my favorite features about the Current, honestly, is the newsletter that you send out every week. It really helps. You know what? There's a lot of distraction in the world at the moment, right? There's so many things going on. The phone is beeping at me constantly. But when your newsletter comes into my inbox, I stop for a minute because I know that there's going to be something of value in there that is going to be worth me actually grabbing a cup of coffee, sitting down, and actually reading about what's actually going on in education in the country. that is, I think, just the tip of the iceberg about what you're going to be able to do over time. But part of the purpose of this segment also is to give people an idea of kind of what's coming up each week at every opportunity that we get to talk about it. What can people expect this week?
Well, coming up this week. Well, one thing
yet?
I just
No,
well,
I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
What are we doing this week? The one thing I did, I mean, as you know, the news is evolving, so it's only Wednesday evening right now. So I don't know what's going to happen the rest of the week for sure. But so you mentioned the newsletter, and you also mentioned icebergs, and that's kind of the approach we like to take, or I like to take to the news in the Cayman Current. Is even though I think education is really important, and everybody knows education is really important, I know not everybody is going to rush and want to read the education news 3 times a day on the website. So we like to think of things like an iceberg, where you have at the tip is the newsletter, which I consider our flagship product. And it gives people, even if you just take time to read the subject line, you'll know the 3 most important things in education this week. If you take a chance to read the first paragraph, you'll know a little bit more. And then we keep breaking it down in detail, and with thanks to hyperlinks, you can drill down on every story. I try to have the original base documentation for everything, so you can go as light or as deep as you want on any of the topics we cover. And so the current newsletter comes out on Sunday, so we're kind of in the middle of the weekly news cycle. What we've done so far this week is, going back to last week, I actually made a presentation to the Chamber of Commerce about the education landscape and kind of what the school choice options are from preschool on up through higher education. And I actually turned, using Google Slides and audio clips, I converted that in-person presentation to a digital presentation. So that's living on our website right now. One thing I also published earlier today is a viewpoint from a veteran social worker named Mark Nickel. And he argues that when we talk about school reporting and assessments, the things we're not talking about may be the most important. So they talk a lot about quality of teaching and learning and metrics, but they don't talk a lot about the factors external to the school that may be a major influence on a student's potential to succeed. For example, poverty or traumatic events. So he goes into something that I actually have encountered more and more, and it's this concept called adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs. And it's a simple 10-question test. And if a child's experienced, say, 3 or 4 what they consider traumatic events, and including experiences, including poverty, their chances to, say, go to prison or become an alcoholic, they can go up, I think he cited 1,200% more likely to, I think it was alcoholism, if you have 3 or 4 of these traumatic events as a child. So he's arguing for a more integrated approach to looking at a child as, a whole human being in their circumstances in society, so that they are prepared to succeed at all. So I think that's an interesting read. Coming up later this week, I interviewed the new principal of St. Ignatius, Martin Nugent, and we had a really good conversation about coming to Cayman and his first experiences, what he's been doing at St. Ignatius since he arrived about a month ago, and he had to quarantine due to COVID, which was an experience in itself, and then plans for the school going forward. So I'll be excited to put that out probably Friday.
One of the things you mentioned, and that I'm sure we'll see on an ongoing basis, is the fact that the best laid plans, may go awry throughout the course of the news cycle and the week. But there are so many different potential areas of discussion around education and schools. And, in the past few months, I've seen you cover a wide range of things, everything from collating the information about the different candidates and their position on education, really giving me some insight into the perspective of Peter Carpenter from the Office of Education Standards, who's just left, but really has left us with quite an interesting read from many perspectives. But I also think that on an ongoing basis, we sometimes, much like a report card, we want this sort of quick and easy snapshot that says, here are all the solutions to the problems, or here's good school, bad school, and it's that simple. And people are more complicated than that, and education is more complicated than that. So there is an opportunity really to explore all different kinds of things around what's going to help improve the system, but also evaluate what's working and what's not. Do you find that there's some resistance, though, sometimes to being open to the kinds of scrutiny and discussion, from the schools themselves? Or have they been really open about talking about their hits, runs, and errors, their weaknesses, their needs?
It's been a mixed bag. Like I've been a journalist in Cayman for over 10 years, and people tend to be more reticent to speak in public about even good things that are going on, and the schools are no exception. And to tell you the truth, education for some reason is kind of a political third rail where people don't want to put their name and face to any sorts of criticisms because they feel like they're just going to get burned. Um,
Mm.
but that's the reality of being a journalist anywhere, and especially in Cayman. And I've had a lot of people come forward and be very helpful and very vocal and very public that maybe I didn't expect. For example, one of the first interviews I ever did was with, you mentioned Peter Carpenter, who was the director of Office of Education Standards, and he was very candid and open, and we had a really good relationship right off the bat. My second interview was actually with Jonathan Clark, the principal of John
Mm.
Gray, and again, open phone policy. If I need to ask him something, he shoots it back. Other people haven't been that
Well,
media friendly, but so it really comes
yeah,
down to personalities. But
yeah,
I
and
would
time too.
suppose a lot more people. In some, there's a lot more people with a lot more things to say and things that they're doing about education than I by myself can cover. So it's really a target-rich environment, as they say.
It's interesting too, so in addition to Cayman Life TV, I'm also the news director at Radio Cayman. So I will sometimes slip in back and forth between my different identities. But I too, like you, found that there are certain people who are, they're comfortable being, I'm going to say, if not always fully open, at least willing to um, set the record straight or give you context that you need in order to do a story that maybe not always is favorable, but at least is fair and accurate. And I think, it's one of the challenges in Cayman when there is silence, when you really do need to explore at a deeper level what's going on. People sometimes, I think, are more concerned about the repercussions of speaking than about the change. I'm not being truly critical about that. I understand why it happens, but it is an area of concern from my perspective in terms of change. How do we make change if we're not willing to really talk about? It's not just knowing what's wrong and criticizing and blaming, but really being able to have sort of a deeper conversation about the sources of the problems and sometimes coming up with innovative solutions in order to fix them. And I'm not talking about public or private school, just education across the spectrum.
Oh, totally agree. And I think one of the reasons education can be so sensitive is because you're dealing with young people and children. And if you say that a school isn't doing well, some people can take that to mean that somehow the children themselves aren't good enough, which of course
Right.
is absolutely not true. But I
Yeah.
think that kind of, and then you get into discussions over public and private schools, and then immigration status and nationalities come in. And so people are quick to be very sensitive to these kind of value judgments, which I don't think are valid. But I think if you look at the mission of the Current, it's to, and part of it is to inform and engage the public on education. And I think by one, informing, you tell people what's going on, and then there's this engaging, which is you make people feel connected to the topic of education, and they feel empowered, like they can bring about change to the system. and then you provide a platform and a space for people to have, and I stress this word, constructive dialogue about things that are good about the system, things that aren't so good, and ways to advance it going forward. So if you really are building a community that is speaking about this all important topic, then it's not just one voice here speaking up and getting shot down, and then one other voice speaking up and getting shot down, which happens a lot. So I hope that the more people that come forward and submit viewpoints and have comments and are available for quotes and want to be featured, it takes the edge off this kind of razor sharp topic. At least that's the idea. So
So
the
one
more
thing,
people speak, the more people are willing to speak.
and I think the more people who are speaking together, if you will, the more comfort there is. Not so much anonymity per se. You know, I'm not hiding behind the masses, but I think the idea being that it is not only safe to talk, but it's critical that we talk, because that, I think, is where the innovative ideas and the change come from. And one thing I want to throw at you that we did not talk about before this, and at some point, Patrick and I will do this segment live. I will hit the live button at some point. But in the beginning, I wanted to be really careful so that I didn't mess it up too much. One thing that I'm going to encourage folks to do is even if you're not comfortable immediately publicly making comments and leaving notes and stuff, I think it starts somewhere, right? So I think that the idea of people sending us questions, things that they want talked about, areas that they're interested in, and even perspectives they have. As long as the goal here is making things better, I'm going to encourage it. What do you think?
Oh, agree.
Yeah.
A good curveball every now and again.
So what else do we want people to know before we wrap things up? Like, what didn't we cover that we should have? You know, and kind of what can people look forward to? I do want them to know that we're planning to do this weekly. The goal is Wednesdays. That will give everyone a chance to kind of, you know, percolate over stuff, and then we can, with bated breath, wait to see what comes out when it's published digitally.
I would just say, you know, visit and watch Cayman Life as much as possible. Visit the Cayman Current. Sign up for the newsletter. Consider, and then I guess in the future, it's only, you know, our plans are to be more out in the community, literally. So we have a series of events that is coming and taking shape, and that I hope Cayman Life is going to be able to be a part of as well. So I think as the months go on, you know, you expect to see more and more of the Cayman Current and more public discussions on education. So we're really, you know, as I said, we're digital first, but with an eye towards trying to be and reach people where they are already.
And that said, that's it for us. Patrick, thank you so much for kicking this off. It's going to be really fun, and there's so much to learn and talk about. Of course, I'm going to put the information. I feel like a YouTuber, and I'm really not. But down below on the screen, Patrick's information will be right there. There's something about a bell, but you know, I'm too old for that.
We could morph into an unboxing show if people are interested in that.
You know, I am a nerd, so I unboxing anything sounds like great fun to me. So, Patrick, thanks again, and I look forward to seeing what comes out this week. And also, don't forget, of course, that you can watch Cayman Life anytime. We're on Logic Channel 33. We do post segments regularly and features on the YouTube channel, as well as on Facebook. And then if there's stuff you want us to cover, talk about, feel free to shoot us an email. Of course, most of you know that I can pretty much be found, you know, glued to the phone. I don't answer it. I just look at the alerts that say, April, do this. So you can email me at april@caymanspaces.com or at Radio Cayman. And Patrick and I'll be back next week to talk more. Thanks, everybody.
Great. Thank you.